For the record, this isn't the pretty bit that I came back here for. Not too bad of a view for morning coffee here. Nice and quiet night last night. It did take me a while to fall asleep, just felt on edge. Not sure if it's just first time being solo up here since all the illnesses or what, but once I fell asleep, I slept really well. I do love camping with Blondie, but there's also something to be said for just being solo, having all my stuff arranged in my nice, comfortable tent. This tent feels more like home than most of the places we stay off season these days. The Sierra Nevada does require bear cans, so I have to pack a little differently when I'm here. This is part of why I like the wider packs, because if I can't have a full-size bear can sideways, why bother? So that is Robinson Lakes. I actually filled up on that little tongue in the middle there last night. There were a few bigger groups that were camped down by the lake, which isn't unusual, which is why I usually opt for things like this. In fact, I would almost swear I've used this particular spot before, but I couldn't tell you when. Could also just be the thing where, you know, once you've been running around on all this cross-country terrain enough, you kind of get a sense for where campsites can likely be found. Jen and I led a group a couple of years ago that scrambled up that, and it's about as loose and fun as you would expect. If you wonder why I do all the extra work of walking all the way up here rather than staying at the lake or established spots right along the trail, partially it's just I cut my teeth backpacking out here, and my enduring memories are of these remote spots that were not just flooded with people. And having lived in the campgrounds in Orange County for a couple of years and done things like the AT, I've had so many bad experiences with groups. I love meeting folks and chatting with folks out here, but when you get somebody who sets up right next to you and, you know, floods your tent with cigarette smoke, or is carrying on and making all this noise for half the night, or is leaving their trash or hanging their food badly and potentially leaving you to deal with bear issues, it just detracts from the wilderness experience for me. Fortunately, most places out here you are completely legal to camp if you're following Leave No Trace and on durable ground. So an example of durable ground is kind of that granite gravel there, just avoid the grass patches. An example of not durable ground is on the grass. It is painful when you see somebody set up in the middle of like a meadow along the PCT. And the alpine meadows here are not like the meadows out east. You will kill the grass and you will actually have a bare spot when you come back the following year. So it is always totally worth it for me to do a little bit of extra gain or a little bit more distance to get a private campsite where I can just soak in the sounds of nature. I only got to about 9,300 feet last night, which, hey, the original plan, I was concerned about even making it past Barney because I thought I'd be here late. So I still have a good amount of climbing today. I'm going to be going over 2 passes and dropping into Matterhorn Canyon, which is one of those really pretty spots I was targeting on this trip. And then I'll hook up with the PCT and take that down south towards Tuolumne before turning away from the busy chaos that is Tuolumne and any place in Yosemite that is car accessible, and heading off west again. If you are periodically hearing planes in the background, normally if you can hear them, those are military overflights. They are somewhat notorious for not sticking as high as they're supposed to. If you've heard of the book The Last Season, which covers Ranger Morganson, who went missing for years out here, one of his things is he had actually staked out some local peaks and got pictures of the tail numbers of some of the jets that were going way, way too low. And if you're wondering how low they get, I've actually been able to feel the jet fuel exhaust as one came down a canyon in Death Valley right over us. And there are places like Tunnel Meadow in the Southern Sierra, spectacularly beautiful and peaceful, except for the fact you have planes passing over you every like 15 minutes back there. I have been asked about trail markers by East Coast friends. This is the most common version of a blaze. It's done by packers, or was years ago, using an axe. It doesn't really tell you what trail you're on. They have some different shapes in places. But in general, they are useful to tell if you are still on an overgrown section of trail or if you're just going cross country. You'll occasionally see emblems on the PCT, though a lot of people seem to have stolen those. And I never saw one of those East Coast painted blazes until I went, eastern half of the US. Just not how we roll out west, I guess. I am still kind of adjusting to sleeping out here. I sleep just on that orange pad and I get used to it, but it's always a little sore the first week or two when I'm out here. Way better than having a air mattress that I have to inflate and constantly goes flat on me though. I also have a little back pain. I have been to a specialist. He was around my age and he kept talking about how things fall apart in your 40s. So I'm kind of taking that and a couple other things as just, I can improve them with core exercises and things. I may eventually have to get surgery, but mostly I just have to learn to live and hike with a few more disadvantages. But hell, I mean, when I started hiking in my 20s, I had a hip flexor issue so bad. First time I did a peak, it was only like 6 or 8 miles, and I was practically in tears by the end of it. I was in so much pain. But as with when I had all the knee pain and issues after that fall, if the choice is come out and be dealing with constant pain, or don't come out to the wilderness and just be around civilization, that ain't even a choice. See, people get after me for the channel name and it being awkward to share with like friends and family members. But how appropriate would it be if I had some bullshitty positive every day is the best day sort of channel name, and I was dealing with all this. So I currently have about 70 more miles left of my planned loop. There's one little section where I might go a little longer depending how I'm doing, and I have 5 full days. At the end of the 5th day, I am hoping to be camped not at Barney Lake but a little above, so I can get out early Tuesday and do the long drive back. So, hopefully where I'm not driving until 4 o'clock in the morning like we were last week. Seems like a shame to rush out of a place like this, but I got to close out our rental so I can get back up here for 2 weeks, Hard life. I really love alpine lakes. They don't get cloudy and filled with algae like the ones lower down. So you just get crystal clear, and then when we get higher, you get this kind of glacial flower, making them extra blue. Almost looks like it's a fake picture. Sometimes we get lucky and we'll see black bears in these meadows. They are always really, really cool to see when they're not, in a campsite getting turned into nuisances. When I do the wilderness class, I have a topic that I teach called When Animals Quite Possibly Attack. And one of the things I address is folks are usually, when they're not used to being outdoors, terrified of black bears because they've seen movies and they're picturing basically the equivalent of the shark from Jaws. But black bears, unless they are habituated to humans, basically have the personality of a giant raccoon. But I get people all the time telling me I don't know what I'm talking about and how they absolutely need that bear spray, which is only for grizzlies, by the way, or I'll get hunters coming by telling me there are bears in the area and insisting that I should be armed. For the record, all my years out here, I have been around a ton of bears, and I have yet to be in a circumstance where I was like, gee, if I only had a gun. And yes, I know the irony of this video when in another 20 years I'm like camping near Tahoe and I get ripped apart by some freak rabid bear. This clip will probably be on CNN. So I usually just try and get people to be respectful of the wildlife, treat them well, aka don't leave food out, use a bear can, things like that. But if you are lucky enough to see a bear roaming around a meadow like that, don't just freak out and run the other direction. Appreciate the rare sight you're getting. The other thing I usually share is the typical Sierra Club group bear encounter is the group and the bear come around a corner, see each other, both of them basically poop themselves and run the other directions. So again, when you see them in the meadows just kind of doing their bear things, it is a special treat. For my East Coast friends that don't understand why the trail's getting all squiggly here, we call these switchbacks. They're an alternative of having the damn trail go straight up a boulder and putting some rebar in for steps. Oh, taters would be happy. We got marmots. Oh, I love it up here. So this is Mule Pass. I'm pretty sure that is Matterhorn and Whirl in the background, which are some of the more memorable Sierra peaks I've done. When I climbed those peaks that morning when we left camp at dawn, we had low clouds that were moving fast right along those pinnacles. And when the sun came up, pretty much looked like the mountains were on fire. Okay. Oh, this feels like coming home. For the record, this isn't the pretty bit that I came back here for. That's the next canyon over. I'm going over a pass on backside of Matterhorn. Okay, I think that's the pass. And there's somebody about halfway up it already. This was actually the canyon I was looking forward to, Matterhorn Canyon. So that is Whirl Peak. That is the most interesting climb around here. The actual emblem, which means the most dominant peak in the area and the one everything's named for, is that, which is Matterhorn. I've been playing with the newish iPhone satellite messaging off and on. It is nice to have. It's cool to be able to send free messages to Jen periodically. I just told her I was sitting at the head of this canyon that she really loves, watching marmots and wishing she was here to be happy. However, it is really touchy. Like, I was able to get a couple of messages out, but then the only satellite it could connect to basically went out of view, so I had to wait for another one. The inReach is far, far more reliable. And welcome back to the PCT. I am climbing up to Mule Lake, but I am dragging pretty hard. So far I haven't had any luck finding water, but if I can find it, I'm going to take the first campsite. Yeah. Okay. I think this is Miller Lake. So I'm going to fill up and then probably do another half-mile or so until there's a campsite away from the water. Okay, filled up for the night. Feeling a little better. There is also a good number of people around that lake, and all of them seem to be on non-durable campsites. But, oh well. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of ranger patrols outside of the busy areas. Okay, left the lake behind, climbed up some rocks, and yet again found some good campsites. So I think this is going to be home sweet home for the night. I am beat. Kind of feels like going over Big Sam. I just run out of gas going up that hill. Hopefully I'm going to build up my endurance. I can hit about 15 miles and a good amount of gain, and then stuff like that seems to happen. Anyway, home sweet home. Tomorrow should be Tuolumne.